Welcome back to the channel. This is the Action Figure Grader, and today we're going to cover more vintage Star Wars items that are either packaged or mint on card. Most of these are from the AFA/CIB auction a week or two ago. I don't remember exactly when, but I do have a couple of others as well. As always, thank you to my Patreon supporters. They get my videos 24 hours early access. They also receive Buy It Now alerts for auctions or buy it now situations on eBay. Thank you guys so much. And let's go ahead and dig in. And most of these, again, are from the auction that ended June 9th from AFA/CIB. They've had a number of really awesome items. I don't know if they're consignments or what, but the first one is the Clipper, Dutch Clipper version of the Darth Vader bot bag. This is the most common of the characters for the bot bags. I know that there's a Jawa, and I think there's also a Tusken Raider bot bag, but don't quote me on that. They are very rare, much tougher to find than the Vader. The Vader on the Clipper, especially, for some reason, that's actually not that hard to find. You see those pop up fairly regularly. Maybe not regularly, but, you know, every few months on eBay, either a mint and sealed box example or like this one, a graded example. This was AFA 80. It sold at an auction $515. Don't have any other data points for you off the top of my head, but I do know that the Tusken Raider and Jawa bot bags can go for a lot of money. I mean, you know, 4 figures, and very, very expensive. Next up was a 20-back H Stormtrooper with the rectangle extension sticker on the back. You can see there it's got the offer extended until 12/31/80, and it was only an AFA 60. 50 for the card, blister 80, figure 85, so 2 high sub-scores. I'm assuming that the 20-back H for the Stormtrooper is very tough to find, judging by the final sales price of $830. Big number. But again, when you start hitting these weird backs that have the rectangle extension stickers and all kinds of weird extension stickers, those are probably a lot fewer on the census or population report with AFA. This one was in pretty rough shape with the card. It had 2 tears, one right there by the offer extension sticker, and then at the bottom a bad tear as well. But again, I'm assuming that this particular card back for this particular character is very tough to find, given the final sales price. 21 back A R5D4 graded AFA 75. You know, my personal opinion is it seemed a little overgraded. The card had quite noticeable spider veining, okay? And so the blister of 75, card of 70 is probably about right. Blister 75, figure 85. To me, this feels like a 70 or a 70 plus, just given the fairly noticeable spider veining. But they gave it the 75, and it did sell for $790. My personal opinion is for a 21 back A R5D4, you can find these very easily. These come up all the time, either graded or ungraded. I paid, now admittedly, this was a couple of years ago. I paid for an ungraded one on eBay $650. It was a couple years ago. And it got straight 85s with a CAS. It was crystal clear blister, and it was very nice. So, you know, that was less, after you factor in grading costs, that was less than what this one went for. That was an AFA 75 that I would argue is overgraded. I'm not dogging the buyer on this. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to, the whole point of my channel is to try and get folks to use their collecting budget as wisely as possible. There are certain items that I feel like you can buy graded already, pay that premium, and it's worth it. I think for certain characters, and as I've talked about in past videos, the 32B Yoda is a good example. This is another pretty good example, I feel like, where you can find this one ungraded either on eBay or on Facebook for less than this price, and it'll grade higher. That's personal opinion, but that's the whole point of this channel, really, is to give you guys price information and to use your collecting budget wisely in a somewhat tough economic environment, right? It's not perfect. It's not a perfect economic environment. And most of us, we have a budget. And so it's really, that's the whole point of when I start saying that's an overpay, that's an underpay. If you happen to be the person that bought it, I'm not criticizing you. I'm just trying to help. Here is a 41D Luke X-Wing AFA 75 yellowed blister. And it was unpunched, no price sticker, $600 on that one. And I think this Luke Skywalker on the ESB card back is one that seems to really be expensive, whether it's yellow blister, 75s, 80s, whatever. And, that's probably one where I underestimate the value of, any ESB card back with Luke X-Wing. I just tend to think it should go for less than what it really does. And I'm just maybe not in tune with the current fair market value of a Luke X-Wing on any ESB card back. They just seem to go for a lot more money than what I'm willing to pay. And I think that it's one of those ones where I'm probably wrong most of the time in terms of where I think it's going to sell. Next up, the AT-AT Commander on the 45 back, unpunched, no price sticker, but it was a yellow blister, AFA 80 plus, 247.50. This is a pretty common character to find on this particular card back or the 48 back. Lots of them out there, and 247.50 is a fine number to pay. I mean, I don't think that that's an overpay by any means. Any ESB in fairly high grade, yellow blister or not, you're paying $250 for it. That's not a terrible deal at all. Next up, the micro collection is one where AFA graded, they seem to not really command nearly the prices that I expect. This one is, pretty decent. I think that it was an AFA 80. I would argue again that it was overgraded. I mean, you can see the back has got a very bad crease on the back of it. And, again, I'm not trying to criticize AFA here, but it got the AFA 80. I don't know how it gets the 80 with that bad crease going all the way across the back of it. To me, this is a 75 at best. And it sold for $405. Again, not a number I'd pay. I think you can get one in similar condition for $250, ungraded. So, not the number I'd pay there. That just seems way overgraded. This is a good example of buy the item, not the grade. And it was every bit overgraded, in my opinion. But, going back to the premise that I was starting with, the micro collection used to be really expensive for certain items. Now, how does this one get the AFA 80 with no crease on the flap? I mean, $455 on this one for the X-Wing. The X-Wing and the TIE Fighter micro collection and the Millennium Falcon micro collection are three of the more expensive items. But how does this one get the 80? And then this one also gets the 80 when it's got that massive crease there. So this is one where it's appropriately graded. And it sold for $455, which I actually would argue is low relative to where I see this one typically sell. This one, the TIE Fighter and the Falcon, I've seen them sell for double this price. And I'm shocked that this one went that low. And this one was appropriately graded, as I mentioned, AFA 80. So that was a good buy. I think that was a good buy. This was not a good buy. And, low gray, I had two different low grays that sold, one by CIB, one not by CIB. This is the 65A US card back. Clear blister, though, that sold at $285. I thought that was a very good deal. Very fair price for an AFA 80. And then here was another one. It was slightly yellowing. It was advertised and labeled as a 65C Palatoy AFA 80 with 285 subscores, but I do think that this one's starting to yellow, that you can see right there at the top of the blister. It's very faint, but it is starting to yellow. But it sold for $102.50. $102.50 for that I thought was a bargain of a deal. This was in the U.S. as well. So that was the Palatoy card back. Again, it's not, the label's not correct, in my opinion, because it is starting to yellow. I think if you send it back into AFA, it would get the yellow designation. But still, that's a foreign card back for $100. That's, a little bit above grading cost. So I thought that was a pretty good buy. Back to the CIB items. Here was a 65 back B Lando Skiff Guard with a Labels price sticker. I remember Labels growing up, and that one was unpunched. $317 on that one for a clear blister, AFA 85. Card 80, blister 85, figure 85. Tough to find this one in a clear blister. So goodbye on that one. You could say maybe that the figure score no longer applies. Again, it got the 85 even though the weapon has come loose from the tape. So again, it's not technically an 85 anymore. It's probably really an 80 plus now. So that might be why it only sold for $317. But again, don't take the photos of the label at face value. This is a good example of that. The Palatoy Low Gray was a good example of that, where the label is not really updated with the yellow, very slight yellowing to the blister. So you gotta know what you're buying, and it goes back. This is a small scale example, okay, but it goes back to the heritage auctions, the May Premier auction, where the label does not reflect what the item actually is. And again, I don't think you're making a huge overpay for either one of those items. Obviously not on the Logray that sold for $100, but this Lando at $317, whether it's an 85 or an 80 plus, who cares? It's got a clear blister. I'd pay that. But, don't make the big mistakes like some of those buyers did at Heritage. Woo! It's still just like, ouchie, This was a 77A Leia Bespin gown, yellowed blister, unpunched, no price sticker, but again, heavily yellowed. $333 on that one. I guess that's about right. I think in the off chance you can find a clear blister for this, it's probably double that price. I mean, it's just hard to find. Stormtrooper, this was the 77 back A with, two big Toys R Us price stickers on it, unpunched, but very slightly yellowed. AFA 85, that's sold for $515. This is one where I don't know how you feel about it. It's not the best presenting AFA 85, right? And it's mainly because of the Toys R Us price sticker. I think if it didn't have that Toys R Us price sticker, I'd be willing to pay that number. But given I have some Toys R Us price sticker graded items, so I'd look at them like, it's kind of shocking. But there are some collectors that don't mind it or even prefer it because it harkens back to the time when we could go back into Toys R Us and see walls and walls of vintage Star Wars figures. Here was a beautiful Wicket. It was an 80 plus yellowed blister. This one sold for $285. Not a bad deal on that one, just slightly yellowed. I think that's a pretty good buy. AFA 80 plus on that one. Darth Vader on the 77 back B Anakin offer. This was an AFA 80 archival case. Now, we talked about one of these or something similar to this that sold at Hakes probably 2 or 3 auctions ago, and it was very similarly lightly yellowed blister, and it sold for $200 or $300 more than this number. So I think that's a pretty good buy, really, if you can live with what it is. I mean, it had a fairly noticeable crease in the upper right-hand corner, but it was unpunched, and a pretty nice item for $416, given that I think the one on Hakes, again, I don't remember which auction it was, but it was within the last 9 months to a year, if not earlier than that. And it sold for $600 plus, if memory serves. So that's not a bad deal relative to that auction. Here was a very lightly yellowed blister Chief Chirpa, graded AFA 80 79 back B. Now, it didn't note it on the label that it was yellowed, but it's very obvious to me that it's got some yellowing going on at the very top of the blister. So this is probably an older graded item. I don't know. I didn't look it up on the AFA population report to find out when this was graded, but if I had to guess, it had to have been not recently. But anyway, that one sold for $210.50. So again, another item where I don't think you're really overpaying by buying this, where the label doesn't note that the blister is yellow. That's a pretty decent price. The Interceptor, TIE Interceptor mint and seal box, AFA 80, that sold for $929, about right, if not even slightly low. That's not a bad deal. Tough to find that one in high grade, still factory sealed. And, again, you could maybe make the argument that it's slightly overgraded. It does have some noticeable creases on the back in each of the corners there. It did pull off the AFA 80. And again, you got some big creases down here at the bottom of the box. So you could maybe make an argument this is more like a 75 or 75 plus. And that one did sell again for $929. Jord Doucette on the Droids US card, unpunched, no price sticker, $275. Not a particularly difficult to find, but that was AFA 85. So pretty decent price there. Luke Skywalker Battle Poncho, only an AFA 70. But it was unpunched. I think it presents a lot nicer than a 70, and $412, that's a pretty good price if you're looking to complete your collection and are not willing to pay AFA 85 prices of $650 to $800. So, a very nicely presenting AFA 70. And let's see, we've got the Lumat on the Power of the Force card, $315 on that one. That one was a 75 plus. And again, it got the 75 for the figure score because it does have discoloring to the torso on that one. So that one is probably about right, $315. Not a bad deal at all there. Next up, we had an ungraded Power of the Force Imperial Gunner. That sold at $450. That's not a bad price at all, really. This was from a seller I've seen sell fairly regularly. He's only got 36 feedback, but I've seen a number of his items sell here recently. You could maybe make the argument that there's a crack in the blister in the top left-hand corner. It could just be a heat seal pinch, which is what I think it is, but it could be a crack. It could be a crack, so it's hard to say for sure. But the card itself was gorgeous, unpunched, no price sticker. Probably worth rolling the dice on it and seeing if it's cracked or not. You can see it right here as well, right there, and then even on this photo, where is it? Right there. You can kind of see it right there. I think that's a heat seal pinch, which does happen. It may be a crack though, so you just never know. But $450 on that one. And then finally, this was an interesting sale. This one was an AFA 50 sand skimmer, and it sold for $370. It's probably got a cracked blister, if I had to guess on that one. 60, 50, 85. So the blister was cracked with a 50 sub score. But it's the Power of the Force Imperial Sniper mini rig, and even loose ungraded, those can go for that price. So I think that was a really good deal if you can live with the condition issues that it's kind of known to have. But to get one mint on card for $370, I mean, I see them sell regularly on Facebook for $300 plus, ungraded loose complete. So great deal on that one. And that one kind of fell through the cracks, right? Just given all the other hot items that they had in the same auction that were all ending around the same time. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at some recent sales for vintage packaged and mint on card items. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.